my name is William Mascitti Merritt, and I'm going to tell the story about my grandfather, which is Polino and Ann Mascitti. Anna Mascitti. And, okay.
So go right ahead.
All right. They were, my grandfather and my grandmother were born in Confino, Italy. That's a suburb of Bruxelles, province of Bruxelles. It's up in the mountains. If you went east from Rome, about 60 miles, and up about 40 miles, that would be Confino. Today, there's 1,100 people still living in Confino. Okay, so somehow or other, you know, my grandmother and grandfather got married there, and all the family lived there, and we traced the family back to 1800 when the Mascitti started. So as the years went by, I can't tell you all the things in between, because I don't know. But then it came to my aunt Angeline was born there, and my father Patrick was born there. Now in 1900, my grandfather came to this country, landed in Ellis Island. He was 37, my grandmother was 36. And they ended up coming to this part of the country. Why? It was probably because of the reservoir. And they must have had other people come before them, and the word gets back. And my grandfather was not a mason or a laborer. And so I remember them telling me my grandfather and grandmother ran a boarding house in Clitting, and that was the Clitting for the, you know, probably the people that, the Italian people that worked on the reservoir. And as the years went by, from they got here, like I told you, 1900, in 1907, my grandfather found out about some land that was in West Boylston, and it was from the Newton estate. Now the Newton estate was people from, they came over from England in the 16th century, and it was a land grant from the King of England. Now they died off, and there were just two people left when my grandmother and grandfather bought the land. They got 140 acres for $1, and the taxes of the town. Yeah. Okay. Now the land which I'm talking about is the land, if you went up Campground Road, it was on both sides of the street and all over to Lancaster Street. And so they built the barn, and then they built a house, and they were doing farming. And as the years went by, 2 or 3 of his brothers came, stayed with him, worked on the farm, and they ended up going to Elliston, Pennsylvania, where they went in a coal mine. And then through the years, my uncle came, Patsy DePatsy. His father knew my grandfather in Confino, and so he came to work, and he worked on the farm. And then he ended up marrying my aunt Angeline, and that's how the DePatsy family came about. And their descendants, and they're all still in West Boylston, all over the place. And as the years went by over there, my grandfather had 3 other children. He had there was my father Patrick. No, there was Angeline. She was the old. Then there was my father Patrick. Then there was Edlo, and then there was Andy, and then there was my Aunt Josie. And all right, so the years go by, they're working the farm and everything is going good, and then the barn burns down there, and from there, the farming must have stopped for a while, so they ended up in the mid-20s somewhere. They ended up selling the land to the DePietro family, and which the DePietros still live around around Campground Road. And then, so he took the money from the barn and the land, and he moved across on Lancaster Street, and he built this house and the gas station, which is still there. And the gas station isn't, but the house is. Okay. All right, so those years were like, a lot of it was the Depression years. And with my grandfather and grandmother living across the street, they still ran, had their home and the gas station, and they still had a bit of farming. They had the vegetables, they had the sheep, the goats, and she made all her own bread, or the wooling from the sheep, and she kept us kids in, we always ate good and everything through the Depression because of them. My grandfather would get on the little bus and he would go to Worcester and buy the food for everybody, and we would come and we would help him get off the bus, and he used to buy the macaroni in the big long boxes, and that's how we lived through the Depression, and we all ate good because of my grandmother and the farm, with all this stuff. So as the years went by, they lived there until the early 40s, and they both passed away in 1945 and 46, and they're buried over here in the family plot in Mount Vernon Cemetery. All right. Now, their offsprings are many. Most still live in and around West Boylston, and we are very lucky that we had Polino and Anna come to America, work on the Wachusett Reservoir, settle in West Boylston, and they left us with a strong legacy. Family first, work hard, and you will always succeed.
Now, what did your father do? Your grandfather ran the gas station. What sort of work did your father do?
My father worked for the MDC, and he...
on the reservoir, around the reservoir.
He was too young.
Yeah.
My father was...
No, I mean, after the reservoir was built, the MDC had
well, they're still this...
They still do.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. They work around the reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably why they were formed, to clean and build, the trees and everything to hold the reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can tell you...
What year were you born, Phil?
I was born 1927.
27.
Yeah.
The reservoir was pretty well established by the time you can remember that.
Yeah. I don't remember the reservoir at all.
Yeah.
I was
it's
here.
Always here.
It was here when I was here.
Yeah. And so your father worked for the MDC until he retired?
No, he had several other jobs, but he worked for. We lived right across the street from my grandfather till I was 11 or 12, and then he lost his house, and we moved to Oakdale.
Okay.
And we lived with the Gallaghers, and after that, my mother moved to Clinton, and then they moved to Connecticut.
Oh.
But with my wife and I, we've always stayed in West Boylston. I lived up on the first house in 1954 on Lincoln Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
Then I bought a house in 1961 at 15 Prospect Street. Lived there for 36 years. And then I moved to Wachusett Estates, which was a condo owned by my son.
Yeah.
Now I live at Colony Retirement Homes in Holden.
Oh, great. Now, do you remember any stories that your grandfather might have told you when you were growing up?
I didn't talk much to him, to be honest with you, and I was too young to, even though we lived across the street, I was more with my grandmother. Yeah, I remember sitting with my grandmother. Didn't speak English, but my grandfather was fluent. He was well educated, and I remember sitting with her and her teaching me, trying to teach me how to speak Italian.
Did you learn any?
A little bit.
Yeah, but they made sure that you folks learned the English, right?
Well, yes.
Yeah, because most families, even though they did maybe pick it up because they were adults when they came here, that they always made sure that their children learned English.
One thing about, I didn't tell you how close our family was like on Sundays, we would all meet at my grandmother's house. I only lived across the street, but they would be like the women in one room, the men drinking wine and playing cards in another room, and the kids in another room. And this is why I grew up hanging around or being close to all my cousins.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. So, could you talk to your grandmother even though she may not have You must
Well, I used to do all her chores with her,
I see.
and I helped her make the yarn. I would hold the yarn, and she made all her own her clothes from the sheep's wool. They would do the sheep and clean the yarn and she would make stockings and hats and gloves for
Everything
all
for
those
the family,
kids.
huh?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that your grandfather would go to Worcester and buy things on the bus. Was there a bus that went by there?
There used to be a Lowell bus that went on 110.
Really?
Yeah.
Go to all the way from Clinton to Worcester or
Yeah. No, it went from Lowell.
from Lowell?
Yeah, it was a Lowell bus.
Oh,
And it used to go from up to Worcester. It was the only bus that went on 110.
I don't even know that there was one there, yeah. What about the trains used to come through here too, right?
They never went, the trains.
Were there passenger trains?
No, the trains used to go up to Sterling Street,
Yeah,
but they never went to Lancaster Street,
yeah.
as far as I can remember. No, they didn't.
But were there passenger trains in those days that went connected West Boylston to Worcester?
No, there was a bus.
Yeah, just the bus.
Yeah, Worcester Consolidated Bus Line.
But your family must have grown most of their own, you had a small farm, right? Even after you
Yeah.
got rid of the big one
Yeah.
and you grew your own vegetables. I know most people
Yeah.
did that.
Well, yeah, they were more dependent on themselves, and there wasn't a lot of grocery stores around back then.
Yeah,
You know, they had their own chickens and their own cows for milk, and my grandmother made the butter and the cheese and everything from the goat's milk and the sheep.
Did you ever know why your grandfather and his wife left Italy and came here? Was it because of conditions there or here or?
That's a good question, but I don't know.
No answer.
Yeah, why did any of them?
Yeah, that's
You know,
that's
it's
what we're gonna
like,
get to.
you know, look at all the Italians that came to work on, and you know, it's like word of mouth.
Yeah,
Somebody must go back and say, you know, there's a lot of work. Maybe there wasn't any work, and you know,
well, that's where I mean somewhere.
coming from a small town of Confino, there was probably what do you know.
Better opportunities.
There
I know
was.
The United States, America had a great reputation. A lot of countries that it was the land of milk and honey and so forth. But
I just have got involved with my second cousin, and he traced the Mascitti family back to 1800, and it all started in Confino. And as you went down the line, my grandfather was born in 1863 there, and they all stayed there. And if you look, they stayed there, got married there, lived there, the kids lived there. So we came all the way from that one town. So you know, somehow somebody must have went back, and because his three brothers, my grandfather had three brothers and a sister that I never knew about. Now I know because of my second cousin telling me, because he traced the family tree, and they came here, and because they lived and worked on the farm, and then they went to Pennsylvania to work in the mines. But you know, the word gets back, and well, over there they got a ton of work.
yeah,
You know, mason laborers,
yeah.
and my grandfather, not being a laborer or a worker, that's how he must have ran. I can remember them talking about Grandma and Grandpa running a boarding house, and I would say it was either around here or in Clinton.
Yeah,
I
probably.
can't actually tell you,
Yeah.
but all I know about is when they came, and then they bought the farm and built it and the gas station.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And so, of your grandfather's family, he and three brothers came to this country?
Yeah.
Then who was left over there?
Well, it had to be just his sister.
Just, it was the only
Yeah.
one that stayed?
Yeah.
I see.
As far as I know.
Have you ever been back to Italy? And
Yeah, but I didn't go back there.
you didn't go there?
No. It was kind of there isn't anybody there.
That you know?
No, there's nobody left of the Mascittis. We found that out, and it was you had to take a train over, and then you had to somebody would have. We were almost going to go, and goes here. My uncle Pat went back, and the lady I'm talking about way back, and he found the house where his
Oh, really?
wife was born, and it was quite a thing. Now, even back then, this was probably in the 50s or the 60s, and he said by buying his brother a cow, that he would be set for
life.
yeah, like, you know, now he's got,
Yeah, wow.
yeah, I can always remember that story, but there's a lot of stories I can tell you about my grandfather, but,
Well, tell us. That's what we're looking for. Personal things, you know.
Well, he was an enterprising man. He owned stores on Shrewsbury Street. He had a gas station. He was a very knowledgeable man. And how he got him, I just don't know. The Depression came,
Yeah.
and they lost everything. Like, you know, they lost the bond. You know, in those days, there was no insurance. And, but, you know, that's why he built the gas station.
I see, yeah. Did he run the gas or did he hire someone to do it?
He did run it, my uncle mostly, my Uncle Anthony. Well, I'll tell you one more story. Now, I lived across the street and I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere in there. And then if you see the picture of the gas station in the card and it doesn't look like much, then all of a sudden here comes, it was all remodeled. There was a room and 2 rooms put in the back of the gas station. And it was 2 big garages put up with a landing.
Yeah.
And they used to, between the house and the garages, they used to where they used to kill the pigs and everybody used to work. Well, anyway, that's not the story. The story is, now this fella came and his name was Joe. And that's all I can remember his name. And he was running the gas station for my grandfather. Now, the 2 garages were in the back, and these trucks used to come, and they would back in, and they would unload these big barrels. And then another truck would come, and they would pick up, now this was during
the Prohibition?
Prohibition.
Okay.
And they would pick up the barrels, and then we found out it was, I didn't find out about it later on, I remember, it was molasses.
Yeah.
And it was a drop for the moonshiners. And then as the years went by, that went on, and you know, I can't tell you all the years, but Joe was very nice, and you know, and he lived with the 2 rooms in the back of the garage, and then one day he was gone.
Really?
Just gone. And a few days, and then all the barrels and everything was gone, and a couple days later, the revenue was showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was nothing there, but my grandfather had a brand new garage, and he had 2 garages in the back.
So he profited by the Prohibition.
So it's
So I guess Joe was in business for himself there then a little bit, huh?
Yeah, somebody was, but that's one story we used to tell. My grandfather was kind of a wheeler dealer.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great guy. They're great people.
Sounds it, yeah.
They're very nice people.
Do you have any other stories that?
It's hard to tell you everything. It's just too much.
To remember?
Well, I can't remember. You know, I remember spending more time with my, and then my uncle built the house right next to ours, and he was a great guy. And he was a carpenter, and he worked for E.J. Cross, and he was great to us kids.
What did you do for work during your lifetime?
I was a carpenter
You
too.
was a carpenter. How did you learn that? By working for other
Yeah,
people?
when I come out of the service, we all went to work for one of my cousins, Henry, and we built 600 houses here in West Boylston.
Wow.
My cousin did. So he taught us how to be carpenters, and then when I left Henry, I went in business for myself.
Oh.
Yeah, great life.
Yeah, great. So
Great town. I lived here all my life.
Yeah.
This is why I belong to the Historical Society, because it's about West Boylston, and the dam comes in and the reservoir comes in,
Yeah.
but mostly about West Boylston.
Yeah. The people of West
You're right,
Boylston. Yeah.
and the things that go on and the things that happen, and yeah, more people should get involved in our town.
That's true.
Yeah, I always call it my town.
Good for you. And it is.
So you got any other questions?
Well, you got any other stories for me? I really like those stories.
Well, I know.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You said you used to do chores with your grandmother.
Yeah.
What chores were there back then? What
Well,
did you do?
You know, he'd send me to pick up this or get that, and you know, I'd hold the yarn for her and just hang around with her. You know, she was
But what kind of chores did she do? I mean, she didn't have a vacuum cleaner, right?
no vacuum cleaner, no. She was just a hard-working lady. Very, very. She just thought of us kids like you know. She was very loving. And
Did you have to work in the garden?
no,
No?
too young.
Too young?
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I used to have to work in the garden. I come from school and,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I know it. That's how we lived, though.
yeah.
You know, you often wonder how the poor people, like when they lived in the city or something, they didn't have all the advantages. We didn't have any money, but you know, in those days, nobody else did. So, yeah, but we always ate good, and you know, I grew up with eating pasta rizzolo, beans and macaroni, and spaghetti, and you know, that was our tradition. You know.
Yeah.
I have another side of my life. Was my mother's side was my father was in the World War I, and instead of sending him to France, they sent him to. They were having trouble with the Mexicans down on the border, so they sent my father. He was in the cavalry, so they sent him down there, and that's where he met my mother.
Really?
In Texas, yeah. Met her there, and then he was sent across to Hawaii. He came after he got out of the service. He came back. My mother was in Oklahoma. They got married, and they came here. And this is how we have to come back.
This was your mother's side of the family.
Right,
Yeah, and what was her father's name?
Fitch.
Fitch.
Yeah. He immigrated, and my grandmother on that side immigrated from Arkansas and Texas. Arkansas and Kentucky, and they migrated to Texas. And he had a delivery business, you know, with horse and wagon, and he would deliver things.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's why he was in the cavalry then, huh?
No, that was my father.
Oh, your
This
father.
was my grandfather.
Okay,
Yeah.
I see, okay.
And you know, I never asked my father about being in the cavalry and or anything, or how old he was, or why he left the farm to go in this. It's something you should do. You should talk to your parents when you
Yeah.
get a chance.
Well, that's a good advice.
Yeah, it is. I wish I had.
Yeah.
You know, you think more of it in your later life, and sometimes it's too
Sometimes
late.
after it's too late.
It is.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm just telling you things that I can remember people talking about.
Right.
And actually, the dates, I wouldn't have known the dates if it wasn't for my second cousin. He just sent me all this stuff because
Oh, that's great.
he researched it. He's been researching it for years, and I got the whole life history of the Mascitti family.
Excellent.
Every one.
All the dates and
Yeah, all the
births and
dates,
deaths and
right?
marriages and so on,
Marriages,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's valuable.
Yeah, he's working now in Africa, outside of Johannesburg.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and I found him. He found me through one of my niece's daughters that do the same thing with the computer.
Yeah.
So we talk back and forth with the computer.
That's great. He's your cousin then, huh?
Second cousin.
Second cousin.
His grandfather and my grandfather were brothers.
Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, small world.
Isn't it?
The
Yeah.
computer makes it a lot.
Yeah, that has done a lot
Yeah,
for people
yeah,
tracing.
he's I got more, and he asked me if I had any pictures of my grandfather as a family. I never knew he had 3 brothers and a sister.
Really?
I'm telling you this because I just found out from Mama. Yeah, that's something. You know,
It
the
is.
things we just never talked about
Yeah.
when you went over there. You know, yeah, I was always over there, but you know, I never even asked Grandma about her family. But her family, there's quite a few of them that lived. She was a Salvador, and they ended up being a lot of them are still in Leominster.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you know where they came from in Italy?
No, I don't. She came from the same town,
Yeah, right,
Monfino, but I don't know
Yeah.
about the relatives, to be honest with you. I'd only have to surmise.
Well, it's quite a story.
Well, it is a good. I could
Yeah.
tell, you know, more, but I mean, it's hard to tell you how many little bits and things. But I'm glad that they came here and settled there, because my kids all went to school here. Nobody lives in West Boylston anymore, but through the years, we lived here for a good 50 years, and the kids still think of their hometown as West Boylston.
West Boylston, yeah, that's great, yeah.
They all graduated from high school and went their merry way.
Well, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
I do. I hope we